Hey, gang. Okay, we're going to talk about discussion four. Sorry, I'm posting this video a little bit late. Last week was my birthday, and so here we are. I hope you're enjoying this beautiful day. So, beginning of the novel. Some of you noticed I had a little bit of a trick question there. I did this for a reason. I asked about Robin as the narrator, and many of you had great ways to describe his voice. Anna highlighted his innocence and dependence. Morgan said he doesn't see the full world yet, but there are seeds of it, which I think is good. Yal pointed out that how much of an issue it was about Robin being different, and when he meets Rami, the difference in the similarities that they share, but then a key difference between them being that Rami is immediately visually different, as Victoire is later, and in a way that Letty is not. I think this is a really important theme in the novel as we move forward. It's these visual differences of the characters and the ways that the four people, the cohort at Babel, are outsiders. Keep your eye on that. Shelby called him lost and timid. Sophia said he's vulnerable and fragile. I think these are all great. Sean said guarded. Ella said intimidated, confused, yet determined. I think those are really, really insightful comments. I also, Willie was one of you that noticed the ways in which Robin spoke both formally and informally. In our day, we would call that code switching, right? You would speak to your professor in a different way than you'd speak to your friends, things of that nature. So I think these are all really good things to notice. So keep your eye on that as we move forward. Here's the thing. The thing about my trick question is that this novel is written in what we call in literary studies free indirect style, or in an older term, free indirect discourse. What this is third person, right? So if you don't know, third person is he said, she said, right? This objective view. First person is I said, I thought. Free indirect style uses third person, but imbues the third person with first person perspectives. So we get the perception that Robin is the narrator because the third person narrative is not all knowing in the way that we expect from a third, or omniscient in the way that we expect from a third person narrative. It's imbued with Robin's perspectives, as you have wisely pointed out, all these different great descriptions of his perception and of his voice. So keep your eye on that. It's a third person narrative, but it definitely has the voice of the characters. Robin principally, but also as we get to more and more characters, you could see that the third person uses their own perspectives in free indirect style, which is a hybrid sort of narrative style. The classical example of this, what we call in literary studies, locus classicus, which is a Latin term. The kind of classical location of this style would be Jane Austen. She's really famous for free and direct style or free and direct discourse. So keep your eye on that. A couple of you asked explicitly, is Robin the narrator? Derek said, if Robin is the narrator, and I thought that was wise to point out. So I just wanted to kind of introduce to you the idea of Robin as the narrator, even though he's not technically, in the classical first-person sense, the narrator. Okay, and think about what that choice on the part of the author does for the narrative. Okay, it does a certain thing that first person cannot, and it does a thing that third person cannot. Okay, and this is what we would call a formal technique or a formal aspect of the novel. Okay, when we talk about literary studies, one of the main things that we want to pay attention to always is the difference between form and content. Okay, content will be Robin's development, Robin's challenges, the world of Babel, the larger British colonial empire beyond Oxford. That's the content, right? He meets friends, he makes decisions. That's what happens in the novel. That's content. Now, form is free and direct style. That one aspect of form in this novel is free and direct style. Another formal choice is Victorian pastiche. Some of you noticed some words and slang phrases that we wouldn't be familiar with, and some that we might be offended by, like the ways in which Robin is referred to in his nationality. Is what we would consider now as a racial epithet. It's something that we certainly wouldn't accept in our current discourse. Um, but these are formal choices, right? In the Victorian voice leads our author to use certain words that are not accepted in our time, or in other words, here's another term for you: anachronistic. An anachronism is something that's out of time, right? It's only anachronistic in our own world. In the world of the book is where it fits. So keep that in mind. These formal choices color the content of the novel as we read through. Okay? So, one big term I want you to remember from this section is free and direct style. So, write that down in your notes. Keep that in your mind. And as we read through the novel, see how that colors our perception, or how that formal choice of the author changes the content of the novel. Okay? One of the things I'd like to highlight here as we move forward, because it's going to become very, very important in the novel, is how is Robin's world, or let's say Robin's objective position in this larger political world, how is that changed by his personal experiences and personal perceptions? Okay, so the political versus the personal. What does Robin have at stake in this world? Okay, so for instance, some of you pointed out how Lovell takes him from Canton and brings him to the world of Oxford, or takes him from this abject poverty into a sort of privileged existence, right? And this will be a pressure that Lovell will continue to apply to Robin as he learns about the world, and as he meets when he meets Griffin, and he starts thinking about objectively how silver working and colonialism is affecting his own home country, but how he is gaining from silver working and colonialism as a student at Oxford. So he's already, Robin, in this early chapters of the novel, is already torn between what he personally has to gain and what objectively is right and wrong in the world. Okay? Keep your eye on that, because this will be the case for almost every character, or let's say many characters in the novel, is that they can subjectively gain from a certain situation or set of circumstances that they know are objectively wrong in the larger world. And I've said this before, I think, but I always think this about literature, is that, and particularly speculative fiction. We know, as we've talked many times in this class, that speculative fiction is critical of a current situation or of a history that led us to a current situation, right? And it's inherently critical of that, and wants to tell us something about our own time. So just along the way, think about your position in the world. What things do you gain from, or what things are you privileged to have access to, that are maybe objectively wrong in terms of the entire world? One thing that comes to mind for me, one thing that comes to mind for me, it always comes to mind for me, is this computer that I'm speaking to you through is full of all these minerals. Tungsten is an important one, that are mined in Africa, right? And the workers there don't have labor laws or unions or things that we have in this country to protect us. And there's lots written about the ways in which those minerals are brought from the ground to a factory of Apple. I have a MacBook here. All of our cell phones have all these minerals in them. So we as relatively wealthy people in the terms of the whole world, the United States being one of the wealthiest countries, we have access to all these things. but we're almost asked, it's almost necessary that we don't ask where they came from, right? So just talking about Robin, what I want to talk about is lived contradiction, okay? Robin is in a situation that he personally gains from, that he thinks, he knows, he's getting the sense is morally and ethically wrong. What does that do? How is that a motor for his development in the novel? And crucially, how can that make us think about our own world? However you might take that in the context. There's lots of horrible, disturbing things going on in our world today. How do they affect us or not affect us? How does their effect, or how do those objective realities affect our subjective lives as we live them day to day? I think it's important to take the literature out of the realm of just pure art and say that, and try to see how it's trying to comment on our daily existence and our historical realities today. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So to sum up, moving forward into the later sections of the novel, we've been introduced to Robin. Robin has a Chinese mother and an English father. He is a sort of hybrid character, right? Another term we use in literary studies a lot is the idea of liminal. And a liminal space is sort of between two things. And we can see that Robin's very identity is between two things, okay? Keep that in mind. Rami is born in Calcutta. He's Indian and in Oxford. So he's also straddling two worlds, but it's different than the way that Robin is of two worlds, right? He has two different identities, a hybrid identity, let's say, in his own biology or his own ethnicity, right? Rami is straddling two worlds just sort of externally, right? And that's going to come up later. See what Rami's attitude is toward colonialism later in the book. See how Robin has to change and choose, right? You could also add Victoire to this, who is Haitian, right? And of course, being from there, has this French Creole, right? The very idea of a Creole language is this mixture, influence from here and from there, okay? Then we have the professors at Oxford who are very solidly in one world, okay? The Hermes Society, will meet other members and know more things about them as we continue in the novel. So think of Robin as an example of living in two worlds, or being of two worlds, or having sort of what W.E.B. Du Bois called warring ideals in one head, right? W.E.B. Du Bois, talking about the African American experience, called it double consciousness. And I don't want to make a direct comparison here because the African American historical situation is extremely specific. We will get into, in this novel, there will be a discussion of slavery later, which is obviously very important to colonialism and very important to the British Empire and other Western European colonial powers in the 19th century and the 18th century. But think about that idea of double consciousness, or warring ideals, right? I think it is a main motor of the narrative of the novel as we move forward, and I think it will provide us with very important insights about how these characters develop and how the larger narrative develops through these characters, okay? Now, I hope you can see how, if we're talking about hybrid things or liminal spaces or warring ideals, I hope that you can see how that content in this novel, those characters going through those things, is sort of highlighted or drawn out more clearly by this sort of hybrid narrative formal technique called free and direct style. Okay? So, hope this helps. Your writings were very insightful on this discussion. Let me just remind you two things. Just for a few of you, most of you did exactly what I asked you to do, and you were very insightful, which I really appreciate. I'm learning a lot about this novel. Two things. Make sure your 350 word limit, okay? Because the AI check won't detect under 350. Um, and don't send me a screenshot of something that you wrote on your phone. It can't go through any of the checkers that we have. I thought that went without saying. If you did turn in a screenshot, upload a file, and I'll give you some points for it. But make sure it's a Word or PDF file when you upload it. The other thing is, just a few of you wrote in too general of terms, right, about colonialism or about Robin's perspective in a general way. If you make a claim about Robin, let's say, I started this video with the ways in which you described his voice as innocent or determined, confused yet determined. Give me a little example of where you see him as being confused yet determined. Okay. Um, yeah, I think that'll cover it for now. I'm gonna read discussion 5 right now, and there'll be a video up here in a second about that. All right, see you, gang.